Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. The newest Special Heroes banner just dropped last night, and I wanted to make a quick unit builder video for our newest free unit from this month's Tempest Trials event, Eldigan. I love saying his name, it sounds so regal and pompous. Eldigan. Anyway, I do actually plan to use him in one of my teams, so I'm actually kind of excited to build him. Eldigan gets his first out in the form of a blue lance flyer. Now, we all know that Intelligent Systems has a tendency of shafting male flyers, so I was a little nervous when I found out that he would be our free unit. However, much like all of the other units on this banner, he is a dancer, meaning that regardless of how great or awful his stat spread may be, he will automatically be of great use thanks to his ability to refresh other allies and grant them an extra turn. That being said, at 5 stars level 40, Eldigan's neutral stats read as HP 43, Attack 38, Speed 26, Defense 37, and Resistance 18. Wow, that's actually a really excellent stat spread, especially for a dancer. He's actually way more min-maxed than I thought he would be. With 38 attack and 37 defense, it's obvious that he's going to be a bit tankier. 38 attack is an excellent starting point for anyone wishing to build him offensively, and 37 defense has a lot of potential for anyone wishing to have him tank through melee threats. Now do keep in mind that he is a flyer, so he's going to take an additional 50% damage from any archers. However, this is nothing that the Iote's shield can't fix. It's also important to note that with only 18 resistance, he's going to be very susceptible to magical threats. Unless you try to salvage this stat, he's going to get melted by most mages very easily. Unsurprisingly, he's also quite slow. 26 speed is rough, but it's also not entirely unexpected when it comes to hard-hitting bruiser units. Overall, this is a fantastic stat spread for a dancer, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be really excited to use him. One last thing to note is that Eldigan does have a super boon in attack, meaning that if you decide to spend your trait fruit on him, he'll gain an additional +4 attack, bringing his base attack up to 42, which is excellent. Certainly worth noting if anyone plans to use him offensively. Alright, moving on to our base kit, the man comes with the Courtly Candle Plus, a lance with 14 might. At the start of combat, if Eldigan's HP is greater than or equal to 50%, he gains +5 to his attack and defense in combat. And if the foe is able to perform a follow-up attack, it reduces damage from the foe's first attack by 50%. Wow, this is actually a fantastic weapon for him. In a meta that really values high speed, most slower units tend to get punished pretty hard. But with this weapon, Eldigan's slow speed actually works to his advantage, as he's almost always going to be doubled by the enemy, ensuring that his weapon's effect activates more frequently. For anyone who's planning to inherit this weapon for fodder, this is a lance that's best suited for any slower units who are guaranteed to get doubled. What's also nice about this weapon is that it wants your units to be above 50% HP, so in a way it synergizes with any units that might already be running quick riposte. Immediately, my Silas comes to mind, as he doesn't have a personal refine just yet, and this weapon already leans into his role as an enemy phase tank. A fantastic weapon for sure. The rest of Eldigan's kit, however, is a little sparse. Regardless of whether or not you plan to use him offensively, Dance is arguably the most important part to this kit, as it'll allow him to function as a refresher, at the very least, granting his target allies an additional turn. In addition to the assist skill, Eldigan's also rocking Caldera Dance 2 in the B slot, which grants his target ally +3 attack and +4 defense out of combat every time Dance is used. Unfortunately, these types of dance skills aren't all that great, as it's much easier to get these visible bonuses from other skills like wave skills, tactic skills, etc. What's also not so great about these dancer skills is they occupy the B slot, a slot that is usually reserved for Wings of Mercy on most dancers. So as nice as it is to have easy access to one of these dancer skills, I'd still recommend replacing it. And lastly, in his C slot, we've got Defense Opening 3, which grants +6 defense out of combat to the ally on the team with the highest defense, regardless of where they are each turn. This skill is not new to the Grail Shop. It is also available on Cormag, who is of course another freelance flyer that we got just last November. And it's also another skill that I'd probably recommend replacing. It can be a good skill if you're tight on resources and just want to provide a little bit more support to one unit, but otherwise I would likely switch this out for something a bit more potent. Alright, and that is it for his base kit. I've got some pretty fun builds that I'd like to share with you guys, so let's switch gears and move on to our first build for today, our budget build. So this is our budget support build, which aims to make the best use of Eldigan while low on resources. The super boon in attack was too tempting to pass up, so I'm hoping that even in a support-oriented role, Eldigan should also be able to pack a punch when necessary. We are, of course, keeping his base weapon, but adding in a refine in defense, which will effectively give him an additional +4 defense, which is certainly welcome. Do keep in mind that for this particular build, we are abandoning his resistance, since it's going to require some high investment in order to salvage. We'll save that for build number 2. But for now, a refine in defense will serve us well. We're of course going to keep Dance, and for his special, we are going to throw in Bonfire. Bonfire scales its damage boost off of Eldigan's base defense, which is already pretty high, so the higher his defense, the more damage he'll do when it activates. Certainly a good option for him. Now for his ace skill, I do recommend opting for an enemy phase stance skill of some kind. Sturdy stance or steady stance would be my go-to options, as they're both fairly accessible skills for any new players on a budget, and will certainly provide him some good buffs in combat should he ever need them. Now for his B skill, this is where we're going to branch out with different options. As I had mentioned previously, Wings of Mercy is usually the go-to skill for a lot of dancers, as it allows them to warp to a space adjacent to any ally that's at 50% HP or less. As the name implies, it's a great skill for dancers who need to rescue any allies that might be in trouble, which is why I threw it on here. However, it's important to point out that because Eldigan is a flyer, he also has access to certain movement skills that most dancers don't have access to, namely aerobatics and flyer formation. Aerobatics is a flyer exclusive skill that allows him to warp to a space adjacent to any infantry, cavalry, or armored allies within 2 spaces. It'll allow him to weave through his allies with ease. On the flip side, if you plan to throw Eldigan on a team with all flyers, which is what I plan to do, then flyer formation would be the flyer equivalent, allowing him to warp to a space adjacent to any flying ally within 2 spaces. All 3 of these skills are fantastic options for him if you know what type of team it is that you plan to plug him into. Moving on, in our C slot, I'm going to opt for a smoke skill. Unfortunately, flyers don't have access to a lot of premium C skills, and so smoke skills tend to be a great backup choice for anyone on a budget, especially if you're running an enemy phase build like what we're doing here. Attack smoke is great as it'll make it easier for him to tank through enemy hits, both physical and magical, which is something that he already excels in anyway. Inversely, defense smoke might be another great option for him as it'll make it easier for him to kill any oncoming waves of enemies upon retaliation. Both options are very budget friendly and work for this type of build. Lastly, we've got his S slot, which I'm going to fill in by throwing in Iote's Shield. This skill makes Eldigan immune to any flyer effective weapons. In other words, he will no longer be weak to arrows, which is very important if you're trying to build him up as a tank. Alright, and that is it for our budget build. Certainly a refreshing take on an enemy phase build, since we of course want to be able to support our allies as a dancer. Moving forward, let's try to throw in some more premium skills and see what we can do for build number 2. Alright, so build number 2 is basically an upgrade of our first build. However, unlike our first build, which completely abandoned his resistance, this build is going to try to salvage it to make him more of a mixed tank. We are going to keep his super boon in attack, but for our weapon refine, we're going to go for a refine in resistance this time, granting him +4 to his base res. I'm keeping Dance and Bonfire in place, but as for Eldigan's ace skill, I decided to throw in Bracing Stance 3. Much like with our last build, this is another enemy phase skill, however this one in particular grants him +6 defense and resistance, and has a built-in guard effect, lowering the enemy's special charges by 1 per attack. With this skill, his res comes up from 22 to 28 on the enemy phase, which is still fairly low, but stay with me for just a moment. In our B slot, we are going to plug in Guard Bearing 3. During Eldigan's first combat in the enemy phase, this skill reduces damage from the foe's first attack by 50%. Do keep in mind that this skill does stack with Eldigan's weapon, totaling out to 75% damage reduction from the foe's first attack each enemy phase, which is pretty amazing if you can plan accordingly. What's nice about this skill is that it should allow Eldigan to tank through some magical threats, so long as he's only taking 1 hit per enemy phase, but it can still result in some pretty clutch plays, so it's definitely an option worth considering. Alternatively, good old Quick Riposte is another solid option for him, as he otherwise has no other means of securing a follow-up attack. Do keep in mind that Quick Riposte is of course also available as a Sacred Seal, so if you're willing to part with Iote's Shield, you're more than welcome to plug Quick Riposte in there instead. For our C slot, I've decided to run with Ground Orders, which at the start of each turn allows any adjacent non-flyers the ability to warp to a space adjacent to any allies within 2 spaces. It's arguably one of the best utility skills available for flyers right now, and until we get Attack Defense Rain 3 available, it's what I'd recommend for Eldigan. And that's pretty much it for build number 2. The only other suggestion I might make is that if you want to make Eldigan even more annoying to kill, you could probably get away with replacing his special for either Soul or even Ether. By granting him that self-sustain, he should be able to heal himself back up fairly often, making him that much harder to kill. Certainly a fun option for him if you really want him to be self-sufficient. Moving on, here are what Eldigan's stats look like at plus 10 and with the addition of Dragon Flowers. Do keep in mind that the stats shown here are neutral stats, so they don't account for his super boon in attack. Still, his stat spread is very impressive for a dancer and arguably one of the best stat spreads for a Lance Flyer that we've seen in a while. Shocking, I know. I myself am planning on building him up so I can throw him on my edgy Wyvern Riders team, which, for anyone that's curious, consists of Jerome, Cormag, Reinhardt, and finally Eldigan to round out the squad. Good stuff. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed or at least got something out of this video. If you like what you see, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. If you weren't already aware, I also stream on Saturdays, Sundays, and now Thursdays. If you're looking for some good fun, please feel free to drop on by. Also, I just want to thank everyone who took a moment to comment on my summoning session from yesterday. Your kind words did not fall on deaf ears, and I seriously appreciate how supportive everyone has been. Thank you. Alright, that is it for today. Please let me know in the comment section below if anyone else is planning on building him. Everyone, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, happy saving, happy summoning, and take care.